All right, so the recording's on. So I want to thank everyone for coming and for the interest in this particular project. I've been meeting with the Friends of Silver Lake, Dave and Greg in particular, since December. I was looking back on our early emails, and it started actually before the first of the year, to try to talk about what the intent of the city is moving ahead and to answer questions. And it became very clear the longer we talked, the more the questions were yet unanswered. And so, pardon? This is the best I can do. You can come in the room further if you'd like. You can come in up front. Yeah, there's a chair up in the front row yet. So the thinking was, as we were chatting about what is happening out with the whole project, because this is actually, there's two projects regarding Silver Lake. You'll hear briefly about both of them. But the idea was that we needed to come together publicly to get those unanswered questions answered. It's been very clear, even from the emails and communications I've had for the 5 or 6 people that wrote me this week, that there is a lot of misinformation in the community about this project. And we want to make sure that we are all hearing the same thing from the department and from the experts about what is and what is not happening at the Silver Lake Park. So that's the purpose of tonight. So it is an informational session that will be given by Matt as our, I think, team lead and expert in the area. And then we're going to have the park department talk about the second project, which we didn't even know was going to be ready, but was announced yesterday or the day before, which is the Silver Lake Master Plan. We will not discuss that whole plan here today because it is yet to be devised, but they will talk about the timeline, about what's happening with that briefly. And then the Friends have some alternative concepts. So I think Dave, I don't even know where Dave, oh, there you are, still here. Dave will do a presentation afterward about some ideas they've come up with, and then we'll do a Q&A as to why or why not some of these ideas, were they considered, were they adopted? Some of the questions may even be answered ahead of time, but Dave's going to do a presentation after that, and then we'll do Q&A after that. So just to be really clear, this is not we're not voting. This isn't an advocacy. In fact, the city council has already voted on this project, and it has been voted on and approved by the city council, and it is a bonding project this year for the city of Rochester. So there was, again, some confusion about whether the decision has already been made. Yes, it has, but what it is what we want you to know. So this is about what did the city council vote on, what's in the plan, and then we'll answer the questions because there's a number of them. Greg, did you want to come up and say a few words, please, about the Friends? And then we're going to hand it over to Matt.
Thank you. Well, those of you who know me, which I'm guessing is pretty close to half in the room, know I'd be a little more comfortable up front here with either a bird or butterfly in hand. But Mayor Norton has nixed that idea, so I did bring my crib sheet to get me through the 2 to 3 minutes she allocated for me to talk. But I first off want to say thanks to all of you for showing up tonight for what I feel is a very important meeting about the future of Silver Lake Park. I'm here, as the mayor said, representing the Friends of Silver Lake, which was a group that we organized 4 years ago to try to bring about or help bring about positive changes to Silver Lake Park. So before I tell you a little bit more about the Friends, I do want to thank the mayor for convening this meeting after a couple Zoom meetings and phone calls with her as something that we felt was important to give the citizens of Rochester a chance to hear more about what the city plans are. In June of 2018, I wrote a column in my Nature Nut column in the Post Bulletin about Silver Lake Park because I had just moved back to the neighborhood I grew up in and had some really great memories from. when that column came out shortly afterwards, I got contacted by 4 Rochester residents who also had really great memories growing up with Silver Lake Park, but they felt the park had deteriorated and needed some help. And we talked it over and decided to try to hold a meeting to see if there were other people that shared our interests. So we put up a few signs at Silver Lake Park, and we were pleasantly surprised to see 40 people show up at the East Pavilion for a meeting in which we listened to them tell us what they felt about Silver Lake Park and what they thought could make the park better. When we left that meeting, I think the 5 of us were all energized to move forward and figure out what we could do to bring about positive changes to Silver Lake Park. So that was kind of the beginning of the Friends group. The 5 of us feel at this point we're now representing the hundreds of people we've contacted since that time who are interested in what we're interested in, as well as thousands of people that we feel are out there who value Silver Lake Park and are also interested in seeing enhancements to that park. So now with the city talking about the most major thing that could happen at Silver Lake Park, we think it's really important for citizens to know about that and hopefully, in spite of what the mayor said, to have some input on what they feel is going on there. Matter of fact, I looked at an email online today from one of the city council people who said in her email, no, this hasn't been decided yet. So I'm not sure where the confusion is there, but that was came from one city council member. So this evening, as Mayor Norton said, Dave Morrill, who is one of our Friends founders, is going to give about a 15, 20-minute presentation of some of the concerns we have about the one portion of the proposal, the $23 million proposal, to remove the dam at Silver Lake. And we hope you'll take that in. And again, I want to thank you for showing up tonight. I think your presence here shows how important this is to the citizens of Rochester, and we hope you take away a lot of knowledge about the impact this could have on Silver Lake Park. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Greg. I will say it's been a pleasure to work with Greg over the last number of months. We've had some really good and productive meetings, and again, today is to help you understand and help me understand what is actually happening and what isn't happening with these changes that are occurring. And one of the things that we've said all along, that both of us in our discussions love Silver Lake. I live in Ward 5. This is my lake too. And no one wants to do anything that will hurt Silver Lake. So with that in mind and knowing how strongly both of us felt, we decided to move ahead with some information. And one of the handouts, I think you have one that's just about the proposal about the Silver Lake that was out front. Many of you have received the stapled handout, and those of you that haven't, they were trying to get more copies, so hopefully there will be enough. If you're a couple, if you could share it, that would be most appreciated. Yeah. It's called Friends of Silver Lake Information Request, and when Greg and I have been talking over the time, he put together 12 questions that he had and that he felt had either been misrepresented, wasn't accurate, had a concern about, and so the staff have addressed each of those 12 questions in this handout. So probably a lot of it will be covered actually in the presentation, but we wanted you to have a handout as well. So those were the answers to the 12 questions. So Matt, you're going to give a presentation, and are you already mic'd and ready to go?
Yes, I should be mic'd.
So you can take it away.
All right.
We're going to try this. I know we're going to try to have 2 mics because I know the people outside were hoping we can get a little bit louder. So we'll just play around with this while we try to do that.
So I get 2 mics. Cool. All right, my name is Matt Crawford. I am the project engineer and the project manager for the city for this project. So I've been with the project now like 4 years. We've been working on this. Also, I have here Bill Angerman with WHKS. He is the lead design with WHKS, part of the design team. With WHKS, they also have bar engineering working with them, and then also they have other consultants they've used in their group. And I wanted to let people know this isn't just a public works only project. We've worked with RPU, we've worked with parks, we're working with community development. Many different people in the city organization are working on this project with us. I'm just the person taking all the information we've gathered over a few years and putting it into this presentation to give you an opportunity to see what the city staff and our consultants have come up with at a very innovative project that will benefit the city.
Matt, will you go a little closer?
Oh, sorry. My hands like to move when I talk, so this will be interesting. So I kind of also want to start out with, I'm going to go through two different things in this process. The first part is going to be explaining the project as we've presented it over other meetings over the last few years. And then also, like I said, as the mayor had mentioned, we had gotten comments from the Friends of Silver Lake members, and then we are going to be answering those questions with the additional slides. So I'll have two different kind of presentations together. But we want to start out here with our goals, why we're doing all this work. Now, Silver Lake itself has to be dredged per Army Corps of Engineers requirements when this work was done in 1991 as part of the flood control project. So the Corps has a requirement to maintain a flow channel through Silver Lake that makes sure we have the base flow covered so we have flood storage available to pass the 200-year storm, which is what the flood control was designed for at the time. It was a 1991 200-year storm. Some numbers have changed over a year, but that's an important part of this project. Also, we're looking at, by doing this project, opportunities to increase recreational and environmental opportunities along the Silver Lake corridor. And what that gets into is recreational means using the water. And also environmental talks about allowing fish passage and aquatic movement of animals to increase biodiversity in this area. Now also, we want to increase trail connectivity. Right now, you have to get off the trails on the west side, go across Broadway to get back on the trail system. We're looking at opportunities where we can decrease those conflict points and increase the trail so you can stay on and don't have to get off it and go across traffic. Also at the same time is pedestrian improvements for safety purposes. The existing Broadway bridge is fairly narrow for the walkways right next to active traffic. People don't like that. We want to provide opportunities that be safer, away from traffic, pedestrians, and at the same time, instead of getting underneath the Broadway bridge with a trail system, you don't have to cross at the road. So we're looking at that issue. Another point is the long-term maintenance and the safety concerns for the dam. The dam is a low-head dam, which ends up being one of the most dangerous types of dams for issues with people drowning at them. And also, it's one of those things of long-term maintenance of any mechanical system involves a lot of ongoing maintenance and CIP costs. We're trying to find a system that needs less maintenance, less inspections, but functions exactly the same. And one point I want to make here is that the lake is not going away. We are maintaining Silver Lake in front of the park, retaining most of the lake. It is not going away. A lot of people kept thinking this is going to be a lake shady type of project. It's not. We are doing modifications to maintain the lake and increase environmental and other uses. So this is also part of our bonding request. I'm gonna need a drink of water once in a while. So this kind of breaks down what we did for our bonding request. We have $2 million plus for the bridge, over $5 million for sediment removal in the lake, $1.9 million for our trail design, which you can see as shown on this drawing too. And then they've added in the future park improvements, which is a different part. I'm doing with the public works, you could say, part of the project, which is the trails, the bridge, the dam, sediment removal. That's all flood control and public works issues. The Park Silver Lake Master Plan is a different project, and there are different activities going on for that. And Mike and Paul will mention those later. So I'm just dealing with the actual public works, you could say, improvements that aren't part of the park. And like I said, this bonding request was approved by council. It went the October 4th, 2021 council, where they approved the 2022 legislative priorities. And this bonding request was included in there. Now, one thing should be noted, we just did these projects to try to do things that we do together at one time. Like I said, when we have to lower the lake to do the sediment removal, it's a great time to do other projects because it takes a lot of permitting, a lot of effort to do that kind of dewatering and do the sediment removal. So that's why we looked at opportunities to other projects, like remove a mechanical dam and put in a natural looking dam. We're looking at trail opportunities. With that dam moved or removed or moved upstream, you would say, opportunities that we can get trails and bridges and other, more or less recreational opportunities increased. So we're looking at combining that at one time. Some people are asking about bonding requests. We'll take one item out. Well, all these items have different funding sources tied to them. So, for example, you pull out the dam modification part of the project, the funding that goes with that's gone. We don't have enough funding then to do the bridge or do the trail as designed in the bonding package, because it was based on the dam modification. So we have to do a different kind of bridge, different kind of trail system at higher costs. So we're trying to use, this opportunity to do as much as we can with the best choice of economics we can get everything done. So when you start pulling pieces out, it kind of ends up destroying the whole bonding package, and it will limit on what we can do. I mean, even our sediment removal was based on the bonding money. If we don't get the bonding money, that changes potentially how much sediment removal we can do. The core requirement is not the entire lake, it's a channel through there. But we know the sediment is full in the entire lake. So if we're gonna go beyond that, we do need additional funds. So this is an important thing people should understand, is that the city's trying to find the best way to get multiple needs done at one time with the amount of money we have available. And we can't just do it piecemeal because then it gets more expensive. Okay, so I'm just gonna follow kind of the bonding request things and discuss the projects. This is a proposed pedestrian bridge. Like I said, the current Broadway Bridge, pedestrian walkway is narrow. It doesn't work very well for people when they meet, mothers with their kids and strollers. They don't like meeting on that bridge. There's traffic right next to it. There's no separation of the walkways to the pedestrians. People like to have that space between cars, so we know it's an issue. It's been a complaint for quite a while. But the bridge was built, pre-1940s. In 1977, they added on the walkways we have now. We can't do anything else to the bridge. The bridge is structurally is what it can do, is all it can do right now. So we couldn't add anything to the bridge. We had to build a brand new bridge to do anything, and the bridge has maybe about 20 years plus of life left if you keep maintaining it. So it'd be a long time before we can do any pedestrian improvements. Now, when you're looking at crossing for a pedestrian bridge too, the dam modification made the bridge location work well because it would go where the old dam was at. And that's kind of a narrow area. It also works out well to provide the trail systems on the North Shore to tie into it, and we can, we can build things together that work together. I'll have more discussion on some of the alternatives about the bridges later on, but that's why we picked the location. And we did have open house meetings on this to discuss different bridge designs. We got the best input. The people like the preferred the steel plate, we call it, girder bridge design, which can be curved. It's also a little more cheaper than the other option, so it was a good economical choice and gives us some ability to design it. Because it is a steel girder, you don't have to build it in place. You can build it, bring it onto site, and set it on the piers, which helps. So that's kind of that project. And then the sediment removal. Like I mentioned early on, the Corps of Engineers requires us to remove a flow-through channel in Silver Lake for flood control. So that's the base. They did that back in 1991 when they did the improvements in Rochester for the flood control system. So that's when they did the last time it's been removed. So it's been 30 years since we moved any sediment out of Silver Lake. The amount to do everything shaded in here, as you can see, working in all those areas, about 200,000 cubic yards have to come out of there. You think about that, you only get a few yards at a time on a truck. We're talking a lot of truck trips. So it's going to take a while to get that project done. And as part of it, we did create a containment cell out at our KR3 reservoir, which is out towards Byron by the landfill. So we have space out there that we can put that on. But a lot of the material is sandy, and we have tested it. There's no contamination, so that milled material can be reused. When we've done some other sediment removal, like around the government center, that material was used by the contractor and taken out for construction sites. So a lot of the material could be reused. I mean, yes, people talk about the goose and the organics in there, and that's, a small portion of it. A lot of it is sandy materials. And right now, that plan was for starting that project in the winter of 2023. And that would be, again, on funding and all the other projects. And again, the lake will be lowered for an extended period of time to do that work. And we want to point out again, too, the Sediment removal does improve recreational wildlife activities throughout the lake. Now, this is the one that seems to get everybody excited, the proposed dam modification. Like I said, lake is staying. Lake elevation is staying the same as it is now. What we're doing is creating a natural grade control structure that mimics the river, but maintains the lake. So then you have, yes, some of the lake is being converted to a river. We're still having water service there, but you are converting it to a river. Like I said, the original dam was built in 1937. RPU took over the dam in 1951. We'll have more information on this too. But they stopped needing the water intake in 2015. They no longer have a cold water intake for their power station, so it's no longer being needed. And RPU is the one that's currently managing and operating the dam that no longer functions their needs. So this is what I was referring to too. We talk about dams that it was built in 1937 for recreational purpose only, and I'll discuss that later. But when we talked about our original presentation set, we were talking about is the dam currently in its configuration doesn't need to be in that way to do its same function. We can modify it to create still a lake in a new natural way that allows more environmental, you can say, connectivity. It'll allow fish passage and aquatic animals to move through there. I mean, other organizations like DNR have talked that would be a good idea because right now the dam it's a wall. Fish can't get upstream. So the breeding fish downstream in Lake Zumbro can't come up here at all. And it would also open up areas farther up to along Silver Creek. So there's more area to be expanded on this. And obviously there's recreational activities. These are being designed for recreational use. We're going to have more information on that in my further slides, but we have a fish passage, as you can see, we call wave pools. Wave pools are where people in kayaks come and play and bounce on the waves and do all kinds of stuff. And the fish passage is generally, that's what it is. It's designed for fish passage, but you can also canoe or float through there. So we're looking at opportunities that you can reuse. Right now the dam's not safe, you can't be near it. This you can play in, this you can use. That's what we're looking at doing here. Now, also, other places have done this type of work where they make these wave pools and these grade changes. They have turned into destination centers for those communities. People come down and use them. People come down and play in them. It increases the use of the area. So having Silver Lake Park right here, we're trying to create something that's going to get more people coming down to the park. It only benefits the park. Now, the other thing we've talked about in this is it's going to cause flooding. No, and I'll get to more of this too, is the existing dam does no flood control for the 100-year flood. It's called the regulatory flood. It provides no flood control, and I'll explain to you, because everything is wide open before the 100-year flood. So the dam more or less is wide open and doing nothing to prevent flooding downstairs. It's not downstream, it's not part of it. But when we model this, what we're doing here is we're passing the same water as required by the Corps for our flood mitigation or our flood control project, but not increasing it downstream. So we're not flooding anybody downstream. There's no difference in the flood elevations upstream. It's just passing through the water for that 100 years. So that's a big thing to remember is it's not going to hurt anybody downstream, and we're not flooding anybody upstream. So here's some renderings. This is the part I like to talk about is people are like, what is it going to look like? How are you going to do this? So you can see we have our bridge. We have the trails that are getting underneath the bridge there. And this can connect back up to the North Trail along there. That's your, what you call your fish passage. This would be your wave features. Again, this is a schematic. The final design is not complete. So we are still working on some of the more finer details as we move forward. But this is the concepts we presented in our open houses where we had good input from residents that they like this. Like I said, it gets rid of safety concerns. It increases, trail usage. There's all kinds of benefits. And the lake is still there. And this is one I want to point out for people. 8 acres. Lake per DNR is over 50 acres. We're impacting 8 acres at the far end, along some residential homes and along a narrow area of trail. Not a lot of usable parkland up there. That's the area we're impacting with this project. So as you can see, we're not getting rid of the lake. And that's want people to realize the lake's still staying there. Now, again, visualizing. These are actual projects where they've done this, where they made the grade control structures They're rock. I understand it's not going to be perfectly natural, but yes, it looks more natural. People can play in them. People are kayaking in that one. You know, these opportunities. That's what we want this project to be, to get people down there next to the water's edge. You can't be next to the water by the dam. That's not safe. Here, you can be anywhere next to the water, and it would be safe as any river. So, now the North Trail extension. Now, this was identified in the 2016 Park System Plan and the Bike and Pedestrian Master Plan. So this was an area that was identified before we started this project. They wanted a trail on that North Shore. And how this came about is that the city owns land along that North Shore. The homeowners don't have land all the way up to the lake. But to clarify on that, when we say that, people think we assume we have a 20-foot wide area along that we can put a trail in. It's not that way for every house. Some areas we have barely enough for a trail, some it's wider than we have for a trail, and some the yards end up going next to the water. So we have land to work with, and in areas we don't have land, as we had presented in our earlier documents and meetings and costs, is that we're going to have to build a boardwalk for areas that we might not have land available to build a trail. But it's all going to be on city property. So we can build a trail there on city property, and most of it will be on land, but some of it will also be in on what we call boardwalk design, which is on over the water. Obviously, when we do the modification, it creates more land. So that reduces the amount of boardwalk design we'd have to do. It opens up an opportunity to save some money doing that, reduces boardwalk. And obviously, again, final design for this is not done yet. But, you know, we all know what trails provide. City has been doing trails for a long time. We're working on one out to Chester Woods right now. So people like the trails. It's been an issue, or not an issue, but a need identified in many surveys by different groups of people want more trails, they want more opportunities. So this will connect that and provide those opportunities. Here's the concept. So it's hard to see this big picture for everybody, but this is showing where we're looked at the trail, the grades to get it. And one thing I want to point out is that, you know, we're trying to get down underneath the bridge. So we're looking at the elevations of what we need to do that. And this kind of picture shows that. Right here's the dam. You know, we're like 3 or 4 feet below the dam. So for us to get underneath the bridge, we need the dam moved, removed, or moved upstream that we're doing this project to get this trail system to work. There's some alternatives we'll discuss later that came up in those comments, but when we look at connecting this trail to the bridge and to the other systems, this is our preferred design that we worked out with WHKS, which, you know, Bill can contend. We've been looking at different options on this, but this seems the best one that fits our needs. So this is what we're looking at proposing, and this is our proposed trail, but we're looking at getting the final design done next on this. So now I kind of went through all the projects, so I'm now going to start answering some of the questions. This one addresses comment number 6 from the Friends of Silver Lake comments, where they asked about alternatives, and one of them, was saying the city was provided an engineering analysis. We have not yet received a private or an independent engineer's analysis of how we can fit a trail underneath the bridge with the current dam in place. People should realize from here, top of the dam to the bridge is about 122 feet. Now, ADA requires you have to do trails at 5%. If you go at 5% from that elevation there at the dam down underneath it, you can't get low enough to get underneath the bridge and the bridge support beams. It won't work. That's what we looked at. We can't get underneath there and meet ADA. So right now, that's one of the reasons we didn't look at that. Also, if you look at our old plan, we can get a trail here on the south side too, not just the north side, but you can't do that with the Tainer gates in place as they are. So we're looking at something you do on both sides and meet ADA. Also, you gotta remember, we're looking at going underneath the bridge. We have to maintain everything that's underneath there. The city currently, a lot of the flood control trails are plowed. If they're plowed, we gotta get our plow truck on there, which means you're gonna have to have that 8-foot clearance to make sure vehicles can get through there and wide enough to get them underneath there. And after flood events, these trails all do flood at high enough levels. We have to be able to clean them out. Still gotta get equipment in there. So the design we're looking at too is what the city would do to do that kind of design. Now, like I said, another analysis we haven't got from the independent engineer yet is How are we going to build it? That's a 1937 dam and a pre-1940 bridge. Our structural consultant looked at the bridge. We can't add to it. It's not structurally sound. So where does that trail go with the dam in place? How do you connect to it? Also, you know, where's that trail going to be? Right now, this is a spillway, and you'll see some pictures here in a little bit. That area is a turbulent area during major flood events, so that also trail will be impacted by heavy, you can say, moving waters, which makes the design even more challenging. Versus a lot of ours flood, they're not having high velocity areas, so you have different kind of concerns with that kind of long-term bridge in there. But we looked at that. Also, somebody asked about maybe alternatives. Instead of trying to put a trail there, put a bridge over Broadway like we've done on Valley High Road and over Highway 14. If you look at all those, they need a long runway on both sides to get up, because you have to have 14 feet underneath that bridge, free and clear for traffic, for trucks. So we looked at that. You need about 320 feet to get up to 16 feet above to where that trail would be. That puts the start of the trail back here, but there's only 300 feet or less to this first house on that one side. So we don't have enough room to build a bridge over it without getting private property acquisition, changing 14th Street, and it's the same on the other side. So I mean, and then of course, a bridge, that kind of bridge is much more expensive. Another option was brought up, maybe try and get a tunnel under Broadway. We looked at that too. Problem is, okay, you got utilities, you got to keep the trail below. So you got to go about 16 feet deep below Broadway, 6 feet for all the utilities. And then you got like we figured you need about a 12 by 10 tunnel to get our equipment through. That tunnel has to be lighted, safety cameras. We're going to need to be able to maintain it, so it has to be driven through our plow trucks, etc., to get in and out both sides. The clean out has to be flood proof. It's going to flood, so it has to be able to drain and be cleaned. Now, to get down that deep, we're going to be 500 feet. There's 14 streets going uphill. So we're chasing that, again, ADA requirement, 5%. We're going to have to chase that back at least 500 feet or more. Now we're in front of more homes. So we need more land to do that. Also, to build that, you have to have a retaining wall all along one side as that ramp's going down. And on top of that retaining wall, you're going to need to have traffic control barriers of some sort to protect cars so they can't go off the road and get into that trail. So 14th Street needs to be redone. We need to do a retaining wall on top of the trail design, and that's on both sides. You need a retaining wall on both sides. So again, the costs for those options are much higher, and they're not work well with the other projects, because when you're way back here for your start, you're under the ramp, you could say your tunnel, the north trail doesn't connect very well. The people walking on Broadway would have to walk back here to go underneath Broadway. Like I said, it doesn't connect to the systems, the existing trail systems well, and the city doesn't have enough land. So again, we looked at other alternatives, but the trail we proposed meets most of the needs, or all the needs we want in this area, and does it in a safe manner. Now to the dam history. This answers addresses comment number 1 from the Friends. I'm kind of go a little bit of history here, so you can kind of get more history. Yep, in 1932, excavation of the lake started. And the original dam proposed, was only for recreational purposes. So they built a dam so they could create a lake in front of a park. That was their purpose. I said 1936 was the last pour on that dam, opened up to the public in 1937. It should be noted, that style of dam, which stopped the movement of fish, was an environmental impact, would not be allowed today for recreational purposes only. Most dams also require alternative use or additional uses, such as hydroelectric power. It provides storage that's for domestic or irrigation, like Lake Mead out west, or like a flood storage. Like out in the Dakotas on the Missouri River, you have dams that provide major flood storage for the spring runoff on the Missouri. This original dam didn't do any of that. It just provided recreational use only. Now, there was a big flood in the summer of 1951. It damaged the dam. The Parks Board at the time did not have funds to fix it or maintain the dam. So at that point in 1951, the city's electric department, which turned into RPU, was starting to use water from Silver Lake for cooling in their power generation. So since they had funds and were actually using the lake or at that point, they took over control of Silver Lake Dam. So from 1951, the owners of the dam has been RPU and the managers of the dam have been RPU. So it's no longer part of a park situation after that point. Now, it took them until 1955 to fix the flood damages. So it takes a while to get some of these projects going, as you can be aware. I don't have the history of all the repairs they've done. We had other major floods in the 60s, and everybody knows about the ones in the 70s. So, but I found some information, like they did some major repairs in 81, 82, where they had to do concrete improvements and some major work to protect the dam from additional damages. And then the big one, 1991, where the Corps of Engineers came into town and did a significant change to the dam. And I'll be explaining that now too, is what the Corps did is they had to make the 200-year pass through the dam. The current dam layout couldn't pass it. It was actually an action, well, you say like a dam, it was causing flooding upstream. So the DNR, the Corps of Engineers had to make changes to the weir design to pass more water. And in doing so, though, they also put gates on there, new gates that raised the lake elevation. Now, I'll get to more information on that next slide quick here. I was going to point out in 2015, RPU did do some concrete and tainter gate rehabilitation out there. So, and they said it's an ongoing maintenance thing that RPU has been doing for quite a few years. This is the 1930s dam. Thanks to the Friends of Silver Lake, they provided this picture. And as you can see, no spillway. This spillway doesn't have any leaf gates on it. It's just single control. There's no changes, so it's a fixed grade.
I need to interrupt. So the timer's gone off twice. Someone is timing this, and we have a number of slides left that answer the questions, some of which are in the handouts and some aren't. I think Matt would probably like to continue presenting and then allow the other group to present after. Is that acceptable? Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
So, okay, so we have the original design here, which, like I said, I'll get in the next show is what the elevation that was, along with this is one of the tainter gates there. Those are used for looking at maintenance. The elevation of this dam is at 972.88. I'm an engineer, so you're gonna get a lot of numbers and details sometimes. So highlighted on here, might not be anybody to see, this is the old topless concrete spillway, 972.88. Did not pass the 200-year design flow anymore. Here is 969, the new topless spillway. Corps of Engineers had to cut the dam down to make room, enough weir area, we call it, for the water to get through there. And then they added the leaf gates here, which is the gate that raises up. That goes to a 974.1. So they increased the depth of Silver Lake 1.22 feet. So it's deeper now than it was before 1991, but it's maintained artificially at that elevation. I should note, when 100-year flood comes, this leaf gate has to be completely lowered. So that's down to 969. So they got a 5.1 foot opening here. It has to be lowered to maintain the flood control through there. These tainter gates all have to be wide open for the 100-year event. So what's that mean? Well, that means, like for this one here, this is the current version. It means that the dam doesn't control the river at a 100-year flood event. The river is in control. The dam was designed that at 1100 CFS, they have to start opening, dropping the leaf gates technically first, then opening the tainter gates. So the 100-year flood elevation is 21,500 CFS, which is cubic feet per second. The design was 22,000. So at half, more or less the 100-year event, at half of the 200-year design event, the dam has to be wide open. So at that point, that's what's going on in that area. And so when we look at this from the dam's perspective, it's not doing anything except maintaining a lake, which we can do in alternative methods. Now, here's about the flow, which I already alluded to. Again, this is a picture from the Friends of Silver Lake. Just want to point out, leaf gate, completely lowered, Tainer gates are open. The dam is just a little speed bump. You see a little ripple in there because it's not doing anything. The water's flowing. The tailwater, which is downstream of the dam, and the headwater are at about the same elevation. So we're not using it for anything at that level of flow. And again, this is 2019, June 2019, where again we had a major rain event. Tainer gates are open, leaf gates are lowered. Like I said, passing the flood elevation, and the dam is no longer in control. Like I said, 11,000 CFS is all the dam can do. We're looking at 21.5 or 22,000 CFS to go through there as our design. Now, one of those things that people talked about is we can adjust the normal water level, but do we need a mechanical dam to do that? If you want to adjust the normal water level, but for the flooding events, we don't need it. That's the point we're trying to get to, is we don't need a mechanical dam to do what the lake needs to be done. Now, people talked about maintenance. So this answers question number 3. The last one, the flow, was question number 2. I think I forgot to mention that. But this is the maintenance. Now, like I said, I pointed out, in the 80s, then 90s, and 2015, we've done improvements, significant CIP improvements on the dam. Now, RPU did a 20-year analysis for us, was as they were partnering with us to come up with what they think capital improvement costs would be in the next 20 years. $1.2 million plus. And then I looked at RPU staff. They're the ones that have to go out and check the mechanical systems, grease, oil, whatever that needs to be done, look at the systems. They also control electrical systems. This is all electrical powered, so there's electrical costs to go with it. They also have to, control how the dam is raised and lowered. As part of the flood control requirements, the dam has to be lowered at certain points, has to be raised back up at a certain point, and is done by electronic system connected to RPU down at the power station. So that has to be done through them. So, and people talk about this section too, but we mentioned, it is a 100-year-old dam. There is failures and maintenance issues. You need to do diligent maintenance to prevent future failures. And so that's what I just want to point out. In a 10-year period from NRCS, there was 400 dam failures. That's 40 a year. So, and also this is considered a significant hazard dam. That's the middle of the road. It's not a low hazard, but it's a significant hazard dam, which means there is property damage and some limited loss of life potential if this dam would fail. So it is defined that way as somewhat of a hazardous dam. And as you can show from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer information, people are removing these. So from 2017 to 2019, these types of dams are being reduced. Why? Because we don't want that kind of dams, in town. We want to make them safer. On here as examples, it had a Tainer gauge system. That's up in Michigan. The Sanford Dam, that was back in May of 2020. The Tainer gates got plugged up and the dam failed, which we could have an issue with. And then here's the bottom one. That is the Shady Lake Dam. Again, had Tainer gates, and they started to fail and had damage, and repair costs were greater than they could deal with to fix it, so the dam got removed and Shady Lake disappeared. This is what everybody thinks this project is undoing. It's not. We're not getting rid of a dam to create a river. We are maintaining the lake and the important parts, and changing the rest of it to an environmental friendly design with more opportunities for use. Okay, this goes to question number 4 and 5. So those questions related to, you won't be able to float down the river. So I have this graph here which deals with the average flow we've gotten from the USGS meters. There's 3 lines here, and what they mean is 25% exceedance. That means 25% of the flows exceed that amount. This is 50%, this blue line, that means the flows are there or higher 50% of the time, and this purple one is 75% exceeds. That means the river exceeds those flow rates at those times 75% of the time. I want you to note over here, the average mean is 132 for the overall river. Minimum fish passage, we need 20 CFS. Minimum floater passage, that's somebody on a tube or a canoe or a kayak, we need 75 CFS. For the wave function, that part I was talking about, the second part, for that to be usable for people playing kayaks, we need 100. And they have a maximum of 400 to 500. When you get above 500 CFS out here, well, the river's starting to flood a little bit, and you might not want to be playing out there. But I thought this was important to see this, so you can see that more or less from April to about September 1st, we have 75 CFS or more going through there. That means most of the year that people would be out in the water, you can use this to float in. Wave actions, a little less, but you can still see, even through the fall, there's a 25% chance any day you can get out there and play in the wave functions if you want to. Again, more on the river flow. I mean, there were some discussions that comment about nobody wants to be on the Zumbro, be on the Silver Lake. Well, top pictures from some canoeists up on the Zumbro River, yes, between Zumbro Falls and Hammond, but there are canoeing and tubing rentals on, the Zumbro River. People are using the lake and the river. Like I said, the bottom one is from the local rental company in town here that does rentals out there on Silver Lake. So right now, people are on the lake. So people are using the lake as is. Now, that last picture down here in the corner, this is the confluence where Cascade Creek drains into the Zumbro River right below the dam. Those are kids playing out in that water. So people are using the facilities. Like I said, 75% of the time in the summer, you'd be able to go out there and do something on this structured lake, especially the modifications we're doing. Now, I understand some people are concerned about, yes, there's a lot of geese out there, and there's some issues, but people are still going to use the lake regardless if there's geese out there or not. Now, some people might have different issues, but we think that opportunity to open this up to more uses will increase people's awareness of the water. If you want to do things and float down there or be in a tube, you want clean water. Well, how are you going to do about that? You're going to get more active in ways you can make clean water, which we all know about runoff and stuff, and maybe getting into how we want to manage the geese. There's all kinds of discussions on how we can do different things, but we believe by doing this, you're going to increase awareness to water quality. People will be more engaged in the system, which benefits all of us. Okay, now this is back to is the DNR. This kind of addresses comment number 7 about fish passage and stuff. And the DNR want fish passages. They would prefer, their preferred thing is get rid of all dams and have just a river through everything, which Lake Shady turned into. That's the DNR's preference. They don't want any artificial waters, they want everything but go natural. That's not what we're looking at doing here. But I want to pull some examples here of here's the DNR's web page. I hope this all works out. Oh boy. Okay. This didn't work out. It works better on my home screen than this. Come on, close. Yeah, I don't know how to get this over there. Yeah, I'm trying to close everything so I can see my screen again. Sorry. So anyways, if you go to this web page, it brings up the DNR's article, Connecting Rivers, Natural Channel Design and Dam Removals. It's something the DNR's put out there. Also on there is an appendix. It has 43 projects as examples. Those 43 projects you should go look at. They show a lot of low-head dams, like the one we have in Rochester, being converted into natural river channels, natural grade control. So the DNR likes doing that. Same thing here is, this project, the dam modification only project, is listed as number 23 on the current DNR's priority project list. There's 71 other priority projects plus a couple more dozen non-priority projects they have listed there. So the DNR thought that the fish passage was a good enough idea to put it on the priority list. So we're looking at alternative funding sources in case the bonding stuff doesn't go through. We can look at the DNR, their dam safety program, and see if we can help keep these things moving along for the citizens of Rochester. So this one addresses now comment number 8. Show a nice little picture there from the DNR that shows the recirculating water you get at the end of low-head dams. Rochester is a low-head dam. Low-head dam is usually ones that have spillovers like we do, and it's usually like 10 feet or less. A lot of them were built back in the day for mills and things like that, which are no longer in use. And because of the low, you say the low height on it, people think they're not that dangerous. And people, they slide over and do all kinds of crazy things. So the bad thing is the mixing of the water, it creates air in there, decreases your buoyancy, which means you can't swim as easily out of there. And then circulating water traps other things, branches, other debris that'll be hitting you, bouncing off you. And then typically in most of these dam situations, which is similar to Rochester, you have, concrete abutments on both sides to protect from erosion, which are slippery and hard to crawl out of. So all these lead to issues, with safety. Now, somebody's going to point out, nobody in Rochester has died going over this dam. That is correct. We haven't had any fatalities, thank God. I mean, these are just because of the way they're designed and the unsafe nature of the water on the bottom, it becomes the most dangerous type of dams, which is why one of the reasons the DNR supports getting rid of low-head dams, but there's also a safety issue. I had a file here that went to they call it the drowning machine. The DNR has a nice PDF on that, which shows and explains how this works too. I was hoping to show that, but this isn't working. But I do want to point out just a couple of bad examples in Minnesota. In August of 2020 in northwest Minnesota, a family went over a low-head dam. A woman was killed and the child had to be resuscitated. So there is dangers there. And even, it's not a low-head dam, but Lake Zumbro, back in August of 2019, some of you might remember, 3 people in a pontoon boat went over that dam. Luckily, nobody was seriously injured. But people do go over these dams, and it does cause problems throughout the country. Okay, this is question number 9, comment number 9. Yeah, we're going to have new river shoreland. I zoomed into this. We talked about it earlier. This area here is now going to be exposed, you can say shoreland. It's not going to be submerged anymore. So what are we going to do with it? Well, we haven't made a final decision. We haven't made a final design on this. But obviously, we're going to incorporate what we can. We want to meet with residents or other groups and see if they have ideas. Now, obviously, there's like the short-term use we can do or long-term uses. We're going to work with the Parks Department and the Silver Lake Master Plan to see if they have ideas for this land. It can be different things. I mean, RPU one time talked about trying to put a little trail of water through there so they could power a little energy, like a little electric dam or something, just for a demonstration project. There's multiple ideas. Wetland is not planned. Everybody keeps calling it wetland, because on some of our drawings, we just said alternative land, or we draw a little pond in there. We have no final set design. The land is in the floodplain, though, so it will flood. So you can't have any structures that are not flood-proof in there, but options are open. One thing we all talked about, too, is obviously we might need some trails in here. You got to get the trail, around the south side and up to that trail. And somebody mentioned at one time to us, well, now the existing trail is a long ways away from the water body. Well, doesn't mean we can't add a new trail closer to the river to keep people down there. So we're looking at providing options in there. So we don't just want to, it's not going to be just an uncontrolled area like everybody's afraid of. There is that existing buffer strip along the lake that people have different comments on that was put in, for the geese control, for 2 things, water quality, and also to try to reduce the amount of nesting geese around the lake. So that existing strip up there now, we might have to move that closer to the river. We might not. We don't know yet. But obviously, you can put natives in there. You can put pollinators in there. You have different options. So we'll be working through that. Like I said, we hope you want to get some of the people that use it, people that are in that area, what their input would be. We'll be moving forward with that as we go. Now this comes back to question or comment number 10 about future maintenance costs. Now the existing dam is a mechanical dam. So that requires special maintenance, special inspections, electricity, and all those other fun things that go with it, and ongoing maintenance inspections by staff to make sure everything's properly greased and using. We don't need that to maintain Silver Lake. We can create a grade control structure that's not mechanical. All that's going to do is let the water go over the top, and it's not going to increase flooding, nothing mechanical to check. We still have to do inspections, there'll still be some maintenance on it, but when you compare a mechanical system to a non-mechanical system, one is always cost savings compared to the other. Now, one of the comments was trees getting caught in the dam, or in the new grade control structure. Well, the existing dam, trees get stuck on right now. You can see that in some of the pictures had earlier, they had to be removed. In this channel, the trees really don't have to be removed right away for any purpose, it's not mechanical. Obviously, for recreational uses, we might have to remove the trees to make it safe for people again, but we don't have to, they can stay there. It has zero impact on the flow. But you can see in other parts of the flood control system, Cascade Creek, and this is out that Bear Creek levee, we get trees stuck on these things all the time. Our maintenance staff already does this work. So to go remove another couple of trees from another structure is not a big challenge for the city and our maintenance staff. So we can already do that work type that. Also, they're concerned about the damages might be done to this during big, quick thaws where ice flows happen or during flood events. They're designed to handle the flow. Most of the downstream end of the grade control structure will be submerged 5, 6, 7 feet underwater. It's not going to be exposed to the high velocities. That's going to be the top edge where it goes over, yes. That's where all the wear and tear is going to be on the system when we have to watch. But we're designing it to handle that flow. Other places have these rock structures. They don't move in these rain events. We're designing it to stay in place. We don't want to design something we have to come back and fix either any more than anybody else would. And like I said, all this activity we're talking about today falls under flood control for the dam. We have a bridge inspection team for bridges and public works. Parks, public works, and flood control does trails. So none of this work is actually being proposed to be parks project. It's all public works, and that's who's going to be the main, you can say, body for the maintenance on. So we're not increasing any maintenance costs to the parks at this time with this project. Obviously, trails. Whenever we do new trails, there's always additional maintenance. There's always additional, but city likes trails, residents likes trails, so we know we have to take that responsibility on to provide those features for everybody. Community outreach just answers question number 11. So we're getting close to the end, folks. Just showing out here that first Post Bulletin article is the 2019 open house announcement. So on the front page, we announced that we're having an open house, get people to show up on it. This crowd here would have been good there. I would have wished to have you guys there that day. But we had a good turnout still. And then this one here, and this paper is when we released the EAW out for public comments from agencies and from public people, residents. That was in the paper. Again, after we did our study session with the council to discuss our chosen choices, what we talked about today, preferred options. Again, that was in the paper. We've had lots of outreach on this project to get our name in the newspapers, in the news articles, and the newscasts in town. We sent out public announcements about these activities. We use our social media page to send out notices and get comments and ask questions about this. We mailed postcards about our open house, our last one, for all the residents that lived around the lake to get their comments. We've done, a couple of POCO surveys they call them, where we're getting people's comments. Like I said, this is all for our project, which isn't the Silver Lake Master Plan, but this is all for the Public Works project. Here's more on the outreach. Again, from the 2019 meeting where we can see people milling around for that open house back when we could meet in public back in 2019. We had 80 people at least signed in that one, and plus over 248 people made comments on POCO, answered our survey. We did another open house after we've finalized our concepts from the multiple options that we've shown at the first one. We did an open house virtually because of COVID through October through November, and we got 300 people to respond to that POCO. But the views, we call a storybook, so it presents all the information. There's links to it on our page. To date, 4,500 people have looked at it, so a lot of people have looked at this information. We then presented the results from all those surveys and information to the council at a study session on November 30th. And then after that study session, the council in December there approved our concept design to move forward to keep moving with the project design and get the EAW started, which you can see February to March of 2021, EAW was out there for people to comment on and government agencies. So we got our comments. The council did go back on April 5th and they approved what we call the negative declaration, meaning nothing in the EAW required an EIS or further studies. The project was safe to continue down this design path. Yes, there's additional permitting. The Corps of Engineers will permit, the DNR will have permits, but the agencies gave us their comments. We also did responses, so if you see there's questions from like the DNR and others on what they want us to do, we provided those answers to those, and that's out there too, so you can see what the city responded to that. Also, I've done presentations to the Rotary Club, Lower Town Neighborhood Association. Again, this is just, I'll go through, this is from that open house survey where 78% of the people want to put a bridge across Silver Lake where we propose, 15% don't. Here again, we have 75% prefer or agree with the dam modification, 16% of people don't. Here again, we have more information again about the trail, same thing, 75 for it, 16% against. Before I get in the alternatives for question 12, you should note on those survey results that a statistical valid survey for a city of Rochester, a community size city of Rochester, if you get 100 responses back, it's plus or minus 10% accuracy. You get 400 responses back, it's plus or minus 5% accuracy. So we've gotten 500 responses back on our surveys and over 500 plus all the views to it. Statistically, our survey is valid. So we have reached out to people and got a good input from the residents. The residents support the project. Well, I'm not sure, that's for more of a political decision, so I'm not being involved with that, but a referendum is to get people to go vote on something, I guess, and we got to look at what the structure is and what it's doing. That's more than just a referendum, and that's because RPU is the one that's maintaining it. This goes to comment number 12. They mentioned we didn't have alternatives, but the DNR EAW mentions you got to do alternatives. Yes, when you get around to doing permitting, you have to document alternatives. And here's a few of them that we've looked at over the time doing this design. First one is do nothing. Leave the dam in place. Well, that means we probably can't get a trail underneath the roadway. We probably can't get a bridge across there. You know, we're not going to increase the recreational uses. We're not going to be able to get environmental, increase of biodiversity in the area. So we said no, that wasn't where we wanted to go. Second alternative, the DNR's preferred alternative. They want the dam removed and create a new river. Get rid of all unnatural obstructions. We didn't like that. The citizens don't like that. That's why I think a lot of you are here because you're afraid we're going to lose the lake. The staff didn't like that. We didn't like that approach. We told the DNR that's a no-go. Creating a natural environmental corridor that fish can patch, people can use, we're for that, but we have to maintain the lake. And that's what we came up with. That's our third alternative. It's the preferred option that I've been discussing all the different parts of you tonight. And as the mayor mentioned, back in December, it was approved, that concept to move forward, so 2021. So it is the approved council alternative. Another alternative that was brought up by the Friends of Silver Lake, they brought to one of our meetings and we discussed it with them, was to try to create a new dam that would leave water, lake in front of the homes, and a fish passage. Well, the design here would need more done than what's shown on here. A sheet pile would not be sufficient for a long-term design, and even the rock structure here, I'm talking about a rock structure here, we have to do a concrete structure. The rock structure, we're looking at our rock structure, is going to be over 750 feet long. What you're showing there is something that's going to be, 50 to 100 feet wide. And that's not going to be able to hold back the floods. So you need to get a structure, a concrete structure, 750 feet of new dam here. The old dam from 37, you just can't cut it and use it. It won't stay in place. So you're going to need all new spillway design down there. More new dam. So it's more expensive than anything we proposed. And you get a fish passage out of it and a concrete barrier in the middle of the river and a little bit of lake on this side. So that's what we were looking at for that. And I said it wasn't viable. That's really expensive. It doesn't have all the other benefits. You still have issues with the trails, the bridges, getting underneath the trail underneath the Broadway. Also, we looked at this too as maintenance. Who's going to maintain this longer dam? RPU doesn't want to maintain it. Public Works and Parks doesn't have the budget to maintain this. And permitting. The DNR is not like new dams that aren't natural looking. They want to try to be natural as possible to get rid of concrete structures that need maintenance and can fail. So the design to try to get this permitted would be very difficult, and the design staff with WHKS and us looking at it, we didn't think we'd even get a permit from them. We talked to them, and they were not in favor of even looking at something like this. But those are all the things we looked at. So when we talked about this option, it wasn't what we were going to go forward with. It wasn't going to benefit the city. So yes, we talked to different alternatives, but we're looking at what best fits all the projects in the better budget and we can use. So I think, yes, I've reached the end. Sorry, it's a long presentation. There's a lot of information.
So we're not going to let him go because if anyone has questions at the end, he'll be here to answer them. In the meantime, Mr. Nigber is going to say just a couple words while Dave sets up his presentation about the Silver Lake Master Plan.
Thank you all for coming tonight, by the way. And if we get half this turnout for our master planning effort engagement, it'll be a great plan to come up with. So thanks for coming tonight. So our master planning effort, we started here just last month.
That one? All right. All right, thank you. I got something going here that's not good. All right, this one's off.
Talking about it.
Talking to this. Okay, here we go.
That'll ring, sorry.
All right, hopefully you can hear. Want me to use this one or both of them? Both of them? All right.
This one's for the recording, this one's for the PA system.
Okay.
So,
I just stick it in the pocket here. Clip it on? All right.
thank you.
Okay, again, I'm Dave Morrill, a civil engineer, retired, got the good job. I live at 140 14th Street Northeast, so I'm right on the north shore of Silver Lake. I'm one of the members of the Friends of Silver Lake, and I've been a resident of Rochester here for 48 years. So we're here to talk about the Silver Lake project. And really the context of my talk and the presentation for the Friends here is the removal of the dam. We are not in support of taking the dam out, and I've got some slides here to show you and trying to see what our reasons are and what our opinions are. But I'd like to thank the mayor for spending so much time with Greg and I and allowing us this time to speak. So some of this is a bit redundant, but this happens to be the bonding request the Governor Walz put in. You'll see that in that list currently there's $11.6 million requested for Rochester on Silver Lake sediment, well, Silver Lake projects, I guess they should be. So the breakdown of those, and Matt showed this earlier, the bridge work, sediment removal, the dam, stated dam removal here, but it's actually for the modification, the trail system, and then for future park improvements. So all of these total some $23 million. The bonding proposal is to provide half of that, so somewhere a little over $11 million. Of that, again, the total project estimated for removing the Silver Lake Dam and reconstructing or constructing a sheet pile and rock structure is $4 million of that. So that's kind of what I'm going to be focusing on here. And you know, the Friends are very supportive of all the rest of the projects. We all would like to have some more money available for our parks. And certainly Silver Lake is one that we're especially proud of. So what I did was look back, as Matt mentioned, there was an EAW, an Environmental Assessment Worksheet, which was the final document that's kind of gone through the city and been reviewed and had council action back on April 5th. And part of that document that goes out for public comment as well as to the agencies, you know, Corps of Engineers, DNR, et cetera, has to state, you know, the purpose of certain items. So this paragraph that I took out of that states the purpose and the reason for removing the dam. So I just restated them here. I'm going to go through these to discuss them. The first one that's stated is the dam no longer serves its original purpose. Second is it's costly to maintain. Again, the risk of dam failure. Drowning risk, Matt's talked a little about. Also that the current structure is an obstruction to aquatic animals and fish passage. And the last is not a purpose, but I guess a benefit of the project that's proposed is the passage, unobstructed passage for canoes and kayaks. So I'm going to go and discuss those item by item and kind of give you a bit of our thoughts and our opinions. And again, looking at it from the direction that we'd like the dam to stay in place. Matt's discussed this, so we can skip a little, but so reason number one, if you remember, was the dam no longer serves its purpose. We think that's false. We think the dam was constructed to provide recreational opportunities, and I think Matt has alluded to that now, that was the intent of the dam when it was built back in the 30s. The Silver Lake Park was part of those improvements. We feel that both the dam and the park are still serving those needs, that you know, people walk around that lake every day. There's a lot of enjoyment, especially during the last 2 years living on the lake. We've seen more and more people pass by. And you know, the reference earlier in some of the items was about the Silver Lake Power Plant. Well, that plant didn't go online until 1945, so that's some 8 years after the dam was constructed. So to kind of back up and look at a little history on how things progressed to get the dam constructed, this comes from the Rochester's Water Primer back in 2013. There's a statement in the 1930s, the citizens of Rochester wouldn't accept what nature gave them. They were in one of the few counties in Minnesota that had no lakes. So through a lot of people's efforts, the lake was constructed, and they, you know, built the Silver Lake Dam to complete that. Our research here for the Friends took us to the Olmsted County Historical Society. There's a very nice document there that the staff had put together on the history of Silver Lake. Not for us, it was just there. They had gathered up as part of their historical search documents and articles and so forth that centered around the creation of Silver Lake.
That's me.
Is that you?
That's me.
Thank you very much. I spent a lot of time reading that and a lot of good information, so thank you. Just a few photos to kind of put you back in the 1930s. Here's a picture of the dam under construction. The workers and kind of some crude looking equipment that was used. And Matt showed you this photo also. So this is an image of the dam as it was dedicated, we'll look at, but it's a 1937 photo. It's interesting to look at on the left-hand side. You'll see there's kind of a weir, just a concrete barrier, if you would, back in 1937. And then on the right-hand side, you see the first of 3 Tainer gates. So we'll look at those a little later here when we talk about another reason. So much of the history that relates to the lake and the dam construction is kind of outlined on these two sheets. They're actually from the program that was the dedication program when the dam was and park were dedicated in 1937. And it's interesting, it starts back in 1897 and kind of traces all the efforts of the city council, the various Rotary clubs, different consultants that were asked to review things, and all the way up to when construction started. So a few of those highlights that I thought was kind of interesting and kind of helps set the stage for the purpose of the dam. Again, the creating of a lake was first discussed in the residents of Rochester back in the 1800s. It's kind of interesting, in 1897, Dr. Mayo wanted a dam constructed on Bear Creek. And I know you know the story, which is interesting. He happened to own land on Bear Creek, so he wanted a dam constructed at a location that would provide a lake up where his property was located. So the city contacted a consultant from St. Paul, had him come down, look over the area, and that consultant picked the location now where the dam is now on the Zumbro River. So needless to say, Dr. Mayo was not real happy about that. And there's an entry on, I think it was one of the council meetings, one of the newspaper articles, that he was at the council. He was the only speaker for the evening, he being Dr. Mayo. The comment was he had his colors flying. He must not have been too happy, and let them know that that wasn't the location he preferred. So anyway, things kind of died down till 1911. Happened to be about the time Dr. Mayo passed away, and the council took up this issue again. So in the 1910s, 20s, 30s, the city was busy getting support. They were acquiring properties. Much of the area around where the lake is now was used for mining sand and gravel, a lot of borrow areas, if you would, for construction materials. So they being the city, was trying to get rights to those properties for the future lake and dam. In 1930, the city had another expert come down and kind of looked over their project and see what he thought of the dam and park project. His comment was, the Silver Lake is a feasible and very desirable park development. And they also looked at it from power side. So in the 30s, they were thinking hydroelectric power, so that would be, using the water to generate electricity. And the engineer, this Adolf Meyer, who was an expert at it, his comment was the project would be clearly impractical for that purpose. So again, going into the project, trying to get a dam built in the 20s and 30s, there was no intention for any use other than recreation and enjoyment by the residents of the city. This is a program cover sheet from 1937. June 24th was the actual day the park was dedicated. It was a big event. They had full days, they had swimming activities, they had canoeing, there were bands playing, all ended with fireworks at the end. So it kind of shows how important that dam and the surrounding park was to the citizens of Rochester. So our opinion, friends' opinion, is the dam was originally constructed to create a lake in the adjoining Silver Lake Park for the recreational enjoyment of the city residents, and we feel it continues and should continue to serve that purpose. Second reason given is it's expensive to maintain. There's a risk of dam failure. Some of these items, again, Matt has shared with you. The original dam in 1937, I guess in my opinion, Matt and I may disagree a little here, my opinion was this reconstruction of the dam in 1991 as part of the flood control pretty much redid everything. We'll look at a little slide later, but the leaf gates were replaced, which included removal of much of the old concrete structure. So that was some 30 years ago. The south Tainer gates, which were rebuilt in 2015, that's only 7 years ago. The dam currently undergoes inspection every 5 years, so the safety aspect or the condition of the dam is reviewed independently every 5 years. And just for reference, most documents, most publications say the average lifespan of a dam is about 50 years. So, you know, we're 30 years from the pretty much complete rebuild and 7 years or from the Tainer gates reconstructed. So here's the little image I just took yesterday. You can see the red line. That's the leaf gate portion of it. And Matt discussed the leaf gates that were put in. Those are 1991. If you remember back to that earlier slide I showed you, there was just kind of a concrete berm or a concrete weir that ran across the river. Well, 1991, that's gone. So it looks like it's still there when you drive by, but it's not. That's a mechanical gate. That's a leaf gate, which can be raised and lowered. That's the primary adjustment for the lake level. So depending on what the water level is in the lake, that can be adjusted up or down to continue some downstream flow, but also, you know, maximize the lake level and keep it near full. And living on the lake, I mean, when you look at it, you're aware that it does change. You know, during the year, there's some 6 or 8 inches of water level fluctuation just because of the functions of that leaf gate. And then the Tainer gates, those 3 on the right side, so those were the original gates to let water through the dam. Now they kind of function, as Matt said, for passage of higher flows during floodwaters. Again, those are 2015. This is a copy of the inspections. So this happens to be the 2019 inspection. Periodic. It's a 2019 dam safety inspection is the title of it. Done by Bar Engineering, one of the consultants the city uses. This is kind of the summary of the inspection report. I kind of color-coded it. The green ones are, you know, there's some 13 spots that they look at. These are satisfactory, no recommendations, satisfactory. The yellow ones are primarily maintenance items such as removing trees, taking the brush off the leaf gates. There's some drain holes to drain water away from some of the some of the joints and some of the bearings for the leaf gate and the Tainer gates. So those are related to kind of everyday maintenance things. But nothing there that I saw that would raise a concern that we've got impending failure or the dam is reaching its end of its useful life. And then I guess Matt and I probably have a little difference here of data we've gotten on maintenance costs. What I've got here is a RPU document that was prepared for the board action in 2015, and at the bottom there in yellow, the comment was routine maintenance total cost about $150,000 since 2001. So that's from 2001. This document was done in 2015, so we've got about 15 years of maintenance, $150,000. So we're talking maybe some $10,000 a year, plus or minus. So our opinion, the Friends' opinion, is the dam's in good repair. It'll continue to provide recreational opportunities, and the historic maintenance costs of this $10,000 per year are not excessive for this type of structure. So next reasons are related to safety, that the dam creates a drowning risk. Safety, I think Matt kind of stole my thunder there. There hasn't been anyone drowned or injured that we're aware of on the dam. So, you know, after 90 years, there hasn't been an issue. One thing that he didn't talk about that we think is a big safety benefit, I guess, of the current structure is the ability to raise and lower the lake level. That's something that's going to be lost with the proposed new structure. You know, when it's not that unusual, I should probably say maybe 2 or 3 times a summer since I've lived on a lake, you'll see the water level go down or back up again for various reasons. A couple of years ago when the 7th Street Bridge was being worked on, the lake level was dropped probably a foot and a half to allow maintenance activities and repairs on the 7th Street dam. Excuse me, last year on North Broadway, when the storm sewer was being put in, they dropped the lake level a couple of feet. And also, whenever they do dredging up behind City Hall, trying to take some of the silt and the sand out on that section of the river, they drop the lake level then to reduce the water flow and reduce the water and easier for maintenance activities. So we think that's all safety related. I mean, you know, just worker safety and being able to lower it. The other safety issue that doesn't happen a lot, but it has happened, is when there's a missing person and they suspect that there's, you know, could be somebody in the lake or lost in the lake. I know of a couple of times where the lake level has been drawn down, meaning the leaf gate opened up and the water allowed to drop to aid in search efforts. And again, that's not a function that's planned for the replacement structure, for the sheeting and the rock structure. And again, our thought is that this current water level monitoring equipment is a pretty important thing, and it should stay along with the rest of the dam. Related to that, this is a little outline of the RPU operations for the dam. So the first 2 are kind of indicate that if the dam goes up or down, or the water level of the lake goes up or down by 0.2 of a feet, which is about 2 to 3 inches, then the operator that adjusts that leaf gate is supposed to make adjustments to try and maintain flow down the river, and also to, you know, to maximize the level of the lake or keep it at its normal pool level. The other 2 are related to flood operations, which gate gets opened first, which gate gets opened last. And this is a copy or a small part of the monitoring that's done. So you can see on the left image, there's this January 2nd date, 2019. It happens to be the date you see every 10 minutes the water level is recorded. That's up by the power plant, and that water level then transfers to the right side, which is indications sent to the operators so they're aware of it and can make the proper adjustments, and again, adjust the water level. Again, a function that is not going to be available with the new structure. So our opinion, the dam has a lower risk of causing drowning than you know, the kayakers and canoers going through rocks and on rapids. And we think that ability to control the water level of Silver Lake and also to lower it when needed for emergency purposes is important to maintain, and a reason we should keep the existing structure. The 5th reason that has been given is the better aquatic movement of fish, aquatic animals. In other words, they can, I think Matt discussed that also, they can traverse upstream, downstream better. And I think you've seen that. That's just the image. That's kind of the 8-acre parcel that's going to be converted from lake to, I guess, rapids and fish channel and land along the south side. So that whole little area you look at here is about 8 acres of the lake. The rest of the lake that would remain is about 26 acres. So where there's somewhere around 34 acres total, 8 acres is what's planned to be used for this this system. But back to the fish passage. It's part of the EAW that was published and council acted on in April of 5th. One of the first comments of the DNR, so that image on the left is the DNR comments, excuse me, and the first one, the DNR would like to note the proposed project would not be considered a river restoration. Removal of the dam and replacement with sheet pilings to retain the full pool elevation, which is the dam modification, continues to maintain poor aquatic habitat. So when I read that, I'm thinking maybe we're not doing much to improve the movement of fish and aquatic animals. The rest of that section that I didn't highlight is, again, as Matt talked about, the need to really take everything out of the river if indeed our purpose is to improve the fish habitat and movement of aquatic animals. It needs to be restored to a river condition similar to the Lake Shady up in Orinoco. And the last thing that I did highlight there was as part of the permitting, which has yet to happen. So whenever time comes to get a permit to complete the improvements, the DNR wants to see a discussion on alternates. They want to see what proposals the city's considered, and they also want cost estimates for all the alternates and why they were rejected. I think Matt shared a couple with us, but probably need for more detail here at permitting time. So again, our opinion is dam modifications would not significantly improve the movement of fish and aquatic animals. And I guess secondly, if that is indeed the purpose for the removal of the current Silver Lake Dam, the whole setting needs to be returned to a river similar to what's been done up in Orinoco, which we don't want that either, just to be clear. We'd like the dam to stay as is. And the last item is the canoeists and kayaking issue. And I just have an image here, some of the DNR comments again that were part of the EAW. They had some questions about the flow that Matt shared a little bit of information. They also had questions about what else is going to happen. What are you going to provide for portaging? So if there are times that people are using it and there's no flow, or they don't feel safe, or they change their mind, how are they going to portage, and where are people going to put in and take out, that kind of a thing. So they're looking a little more. They, being the DNR, has questions about a little bigger scope of the recreational abilities here to kayak and canoe. And again, Matt and I probably have a little different opinion. Well, I know we do. On this, it's the same slide he showed you. My line's the same spot his is, 100 CFS. So again, that 100 CFS line, this red one here, that represents kind of they call it a wave function. So it's basically kind of a rapids, water, kind of shooting the rapids kind of thing that would be for kayaking, canoeing. This blue line, middle blue line here, that's the average flow. So if you just take the highs and the lows and you average them, that's the historic average flow through the Zumbro or through Silver Lake. And you can see here come, 1st of August or so, end of July, 1st of August, on through the fall. That average flow is not going to provide that 100 CFS. And I know from other people that have watched the flow on the Zumbro more than I have, kind of share that opinion that there's, gets to be days there's not a lot of flow. So the ability to canoe and and kayak is going to be pretty limited. So I'm not so sure how much we should put into, you know, having that ability. So, again, our opinion, discharge will be low. The kayaking and canoeing certainly isn't going to be every day. And you know, those fall months are going to be kind of hit and miss in our opinion. So this is it. We're done here with our part of it. Again, we want the dam to stay. You know, our bonding bill is up at the state capitol. It will be heard here as the legislature continues. So any opinions about it can be passed on to your legislators. And thank you very much from the Friends of Silver Lake.
So thank you very much for that presentation. I know some of the issues have been addressed already. We can do Q&A, but I'm wondering if there were any questions that came up that were not part of the 12 questions that should be addressed. Just a second.
Yeah, just quickly on the maintenance aspects of it. Yes, we have lowered the dam. You have to have a process to do it. The DNR are supposed to be notified whenever you lower the dam to lower the water out there. We did it for some of the dredging projects to help it. We don't need to lower it to do the dredging projects. The work on Broadway, they installed the storm sewer. They didn't need to lower it to do it, but it made it easier for the contractor. So we don't really need to use the dam to do the maintenance activities that, you know, David mentioned those projects. It makes it easier to do them, but we don't need the dam to do that. As for future use, the final design's not done. We are looking to see if we can add something to lower the flow, some sort of like bypass structure if we wanted to do something in there. Also for future maintenance, if we do want to lower it, like I said, in winter time as we usually do the dredging, it's down to less than 100 CFS. As Dave was pointing out, it's pretty low. We can use flood pumps to pump the water down to lower the level if we really needed to use it that way. But like I want to point out, maintenance-wise, we don't need the dam to be in place and be used as it is today to do the same maintenance activities. And it happens, 4 or 5 times in the last 10 years. Is not justification to keeping a mechanical dam in place just to assist with a project that doesn't need it. So I just want a little clarification on that. Thank you.
Okay, now moving ahead, we will answer questions that people have. They will have to be, someone will come around with the microphone, but I have to repeat the questions into the mic that is being recorded for Senator Senjum and the other legislators. So just be patient as we do this, please.
My question is regarding the ponds. Can they be located on the west side of the bridge rather than the east side?
The question was, on the ponds, can they be located on the west side rather than the east?
Well, that creates, you could potentially do them over there, but then you can't put any passage underneath, the trail passage underneath. You still have the bridge cross going across. So we looked at the best location for all the other projects as we were proposing it. If we did it on the other side too, we have the Cascade Creek conveyance coming in there. So we'd have to look at the impacts of that junction. And honestly, we have more water around the existing bridge. So if the future bridge reconstruction, it'd be more difficult if we had another, 10 feet of water underneath it. So ideally for all the projects, it does not work to do that. That's why we didn't look at that option.
Thank you. Next question.
Did you want to take from your side, Wendy, or am I just?
Actually, Cindy's got it here.
We'll go back and forth.
We'll go back in.
So besides the Silver Lake Dam, there's a dam at Riverside Elementary School. There's a dam at Apache Mall. There's a dam at Mayowood. Taking out that dam is not, this isn't a salmon run. We're not talking about sport fishing and things like that. It's not going to,
What's your question for?
why do we need to take out the dam?
Great. Why do we need to take out the dam?
Well, again, I discussed this, the maintenance costs, the safety concerns the city has brought up. That's why we're looking also at the other projects. Yes, there are other dams upstream. All those are low head, even slower head dams, like some of those on Zumbro, some of those on Bear Creek. And ideally, for a long-term program, you want to replace those with a more natural system so fish can keep moving. You can't get any fish upstream right now with the Silver Lake Dam in place. That's the first one. Obviously, these projects takes lots of money. It takes time. So we got to start somewhere if we want to make water quality improvements and habitat improvements. We go all the way up on the Silver Creek, so that's all being increased fishery. So there are areas that will impact it right away. The others will need additional work.
Next question.
I would like to know what the Corps of Engineers specific terminology is regarding the importance of the Silver Lake Dam with regard to the flood control work we've done.
Can you repeat the question? I'm not sure I can do it justice.
Sure. Want to repeat the question first?
I'll repeat the question. The question was, what was the opinion of the Corps of Engineers regarding the dam? Sorry, exact terminology. Okay, so I'm Bill Angerman. I'm the consultant one of the consultants on the project. And the Corps of Engineers' opinion, exact terminology is you have to meet their requirements. And their requirements are that you do not cause a rise of more than 6 inches for the regulatory flood. So what we have to show them is that when we model with the dam and without the dam, that we do not change any flood impacts. So we have done that on a preliminary basis, as Matt mentioned. And then we will have to submit if we move forward with a final design. So basically, anything that we do with the dam cannot change any lake elevation by more than 6 inches. And actually, the model runs we had basically showed that modifying the dam will create no impact in flood elevation.
Okay, we have another question.
So to go on top of that one, I know throughout the course of the year, we're not going to have as much volatility of the ebbs and flow of the river, but I was at Silver Lake for 15 years, and we've had 3 floods over 100 years. I believe 2010 and 2013 were both 500-year floods. My question is, in those larger floods, without the lever being able to lower 5 to 8 feet, I think, just depending on the different lever that you use, that there's going to be a lot more rise for those higher floods. And my biggest concern when I look at the environmental assessment that you guys did, and we're looking at the 500-year flood, on that map, the neighborhoods west of Silver Lake over Broadway are inside that. And the lever that we have so far, it's kept it within the banks. But without that lever, it seems like a pretty good possibility that those neighborhoods are going to be full of water again.
So the question is about flooding, that the dam prevents flooding and that, the changes won't prevent the flooding and the 500-year event might happen, and we've had 500-year events come through the system. Do you want? Okay.
Go ahead, or I can take it.
Well, like I said, we haven't had a 500-year storm come through the system. I know they've talked about that. If you look at hydrology for the area, not all the water is like in the 2005 event and other events, 2007. A lot of the water wasn't on top of Rochester. So the watershed that feeds the Zumbro, which is all towards Byron, did not get the 500-year event. We haven't had it. We had some close to 100-year events, for sure, flow through that system. But the 500-year event you're talking about modeling, the dam doesn't do anything. The dam's wide open before we even get to the 100-year event. So the dam has no function at half the 100-year event. So the 500-year event will happen with or without the dam the same place. The current weir we're doing, I talk about weir length. The dam is short, and so we're looking at a longer weir with more weir width. So you're actually letting more water be able to go over at a smaller elevation at the proposed new structure versus the narrow structure that's currently at the current dam. So yes, it has to be higher there, but our structure is looking at to have a low so that we maintain the same elevation as Bill just mentioned. It would not increase the 100-year flood.
Anything else?
Nope, I think you got it.
Okay. You got it. Let's go. Got one over here. We can come back and forth. Yep.
It sounds to me like the proposed, what the Friends of Silver Lake really want is to leave things exactly as they are. Is that true?
Dave? Here, you gotta use these.
Yeah, those are
Remembering it's a, I can hold memory.
All right. No. Okay, the question is, the Friends of Silver Lake want to leave things exactly as they are. We want to leave the dam in place. We also want all the other improvements that are proposed to happen. So we support the trails, we support the other items that are part of the bonding issue, we support the pedestrian bridge. We think that that can all occur with the dam still in place. And, we feel that the dam was an important part of our history, that it created the lake, that it was there for recreational uses. It's got life left in it, and we want to maintain and keep those 8 acres of water as part of the lake so we can enjoy them when we walk around the shoreline.
And I think, Matt, if you could address why it's a package rather than individual projects, because it hits that answer.
Yeah, you guys heard it. We get rid of one, the rest of them go away. We can't do it as planned, so you can't just pick and choose.
Thank you. We
want to do?
we were going back, we have one back here. We'll come back, Aaron. Okay.
Hi, I just have one question. Do you have in this project a maintenance for doing maintenance and cleaning and clearing the park after the project is done? And the reason I ask that question is the Friends of Silver Lake got started because Silver Lake Park was not taken care of. And Dave Morrell, Greg, my wife, we still clean the park.
Absolutely.
We still, if you notice, there's a land and stone wall that people didn't know was there until my wife and others.
The question is, given the project, is there going to be maintenance of the park ongoing afterward?
Yes.
Okay.
Like I said, these projects are not related to the park, so it has nothing to do with the park maintenance, the ongoing cleanup of materials in the park. It has to do with the project itself. When the project areas that we disturb will be restored back to original condition, so there'll be nothing in the park disturbed. We're all within the, you could say, the water lines of the existing lake. So, yeah, nothing coming with this project.
So I think perhaps that might come with the other, maybe that's the wrong person to answer it then.
Yeah, good question, thank you. As of right now, the question was raised by Mr. Perry that, the maintenance activities that the park department does. There's been ongoing, longstanding shortages in funding for park maintenance. That's a council priority decision to improve that over time. It's really a council decision on funding as well. So we'll see that as time goes on.
Got one back here.
And I just want to add thank you to the folks who do that, because they're absolutely right. Sean Palmer, I see him in the back, Councilmember Palmer. Greg and the Friends of Silver Lake do a fabulous job with plantings, with watering, with keeping the park clean. So, and to Mike's point, if we want to take that off the backs of the Friends of Silver Lake and put it on the staff, the city council will have to take action on that.
Mayor, can I just please jump in? Just question protocol. We're trying to get to as many people as possible. And so if you have a repeat question, we're going to first try and get to as many people who have not had an opportunity to ask. But we can certainly circle back if there's time, or we can write those questions down, we can provide them as a follow-up following this meeting. So we want to make sure everyone has a chance.
Let him finish what he was saying.
We'll get back to him.
Yeah.
We'll get to him.
I'd like to say that I've also read the DNR comments, and their recommendations to make it an open river is really something that ought to be considered, and I commend the city for looking for this compromise plan, which is really what it is. And my question is specifically for the Friends of Silver Lake. I've actually asked to be part of that organization, part of a board of directors, and have been told, no, I can't, it's a private group. So I'm just curious about exactly for whom they speak and why it's being the loudest voice heard here.
Okay, I'm not sure that's a question about the Silver Lake project, but your question is, how are the Friends organized and for who do they speak? Is that correct? Okay, okay. Do you want to address that, Greg, as the Silver Lake leader?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a question that's been addressed by this gentleman to me before, and the reality is when, as I pointed out earlier on, when the five of us realized that there were a lot of people who felt the way we did, that Silver Lake had been ignored and needed more help, we began reaching out to the community. One of the things we didn't want to do was become an official, formal 501c3 organization that has to have some bylaws and has to have formal meetings. We knew the five of us were committed. Most of us are retirees, except for Sean. And we knew what we wanted to do, and we knew we had a lot of people who supported what we wanted to do. And as I mentioned earlier tonight, we know that number is in the hundreds because we've talked to hundreds of people that support what we do, and we're guessing people we haven't talked to would number in the thousands that support what we're doing. So I hope that answers. And
Why can't he be a member? I think that's his question.
well, there is quote no there is.
It seems like you're extrapolating 5 people to hundreds of people you've talked to.
I'm not extrapolating. I'm talking. Yeah, that's right. We're extrapolating 5 people to the hundreds of people we talk to.
You're taking your opinions and saying hundreds of people support.
No, we're saying hundreds of people have talked to us and say they support it. I'm saying thousands of people that haven't talked to us, I'm guessing would support it if they did talk to us. That's what I'm saying.
So-
That's what I said earlier tonight, had you listened.
Tell him. Don't be rude. Can you tell him why you're selective in your membership?
We're not selective in our membership. Anybody who wants to make improvements to Silver Lake Park, and that would not include turning it into a river without a lake, is welcome to give us information. We'll certainly take that. We listen to people. We ask people to give us information. So, thank you.
Absolutely.
Hi. So in 2017, there was a report about the restoration of the Zumbro watershed. And I mean, it's a 195-page report, so I don't want to go through all the points there, but there were 2 recommendations as to what they could do for the South Fork branch. One of them was, in the Rochester corridor, increase the amount of vegetations and wetlands. So I see that your plan includes that, but the other recommendation was that they needed to be a number of what they called dry ponds for 10-year overflow of the water. And so I don't see that in that plan. And in the current use of the Silver Lake, one thing that always has concerned me and amazed me was that they were dumping snowbanks in that little area close to the public with dumping extra salt in the water system. So has that been taken into account for the maintenance of that section?
So this is, yeah, he said this is a technical question, so we'll go back over here. And if you can repeat it, could you hear it?
Well, I heard parts of it. You're asking about the 2017 plan that talked about the oversaw watershed plan that you talked about and putting in other detention structures and stuff like that. Well, again, that's outside the scope of this project because you won't have room in Silver Lake to do that. But we do have a surface water master plan and a city surface water plan that's being worked on. And those do address that. Now they're talking about flood storage along with water quality improvements and stuff like that. And we have worked with the county on that out there towards Byron on the Cascade Creek. They put some offline ponds that the Cascade Creek overflows into to provide flood storage. And we did the reconstruction of Cascade Creek through the old golf course. That was for water quality and environmental improvements. The city participated in that. The DNR was the lead for that. And stuff outside the city, the county was the lead for.
Jen, I have a question here.
The old snow dump? Okay, well, the snow dump, we haven't addressed it. We haven't gotten on the final design. That is where the sediment's going to go, and we haul it out right now. Our current plan would be to fill it back up full, flat, that could be used for surface uses in the park, but we would keep that area outlined for future maintenance, so we have to dredge in 30 years again. We would use that same location. That's the current plan. Some people have brought up ideas too about digging it out completely and adding a couple more acres back to replace what we lost. I mean, we haven't got to the final design, so that could be an option, but we have to have more input and get to that point. We're just trying to get to that final design to get all that information.
And so can I,
Yeah, we stopped using it as a snow dump, so it's no longer being used for that.
yeah. So you mentioned input. You were still willing to take input on that. How might that, when and where can that input be given about what would happen to that property?
Well, we'll be working on the final design, so we'll be sending out there, I guess, additional. Oh, sir, well, Mike wants to do that? Well, I'm thinking for my project, Mike, for your project.
Yeah, so again, we got 2 projects going on here. So part of that conversation about the old snow dump area will be part of the master planning effort to see what do we want to do with that property. Will it be filled back up as Matt laid out earlier, or will part of it be carved off to be put back into actual water surface area?
We've got a question in the back.
I have 2 topics, but mostly technical, so I guess Matt, stay put. You say, and as near as my scribbles can quote you, we are maintaining the lake, we are not creating a river. All of your pictures, to me, look like a river. With 8 acres gone, 26 left, that's 25% of what was dammed up to make a river. That is a statement, not a question, but it connects to my next concern. Without the dam, not the flood years, but the dry years, which we have seen many more recently, the northeast ponds and the wildlife and the habitat are going to dry up. If we don't have a dam, how do we protect that habitat?
So this, again, has to do with water levels. Is there a guarantee even in a dry year that they will remain the same they are now in order to protect the wildlife? And she has a lovely depiction of all the animals. Waterfowl, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. And her concern is, will it be affected by the changes?
The first thing in there is we are maintaining the exact same elevation that's out there now. So if it dried up now, because the dam's always raised up when the water levels go down, it doesn't drop during droughts. It has to stay at the elevation for water to go over. So if it drops, it will drop at the same time for our project. It's not going to be anything to control. It'll be maintain that existing level. So water should be back there in droughts like other lakes that you could have reductions. The other first statement there too is you got to remember, it's 8 acres out of a DNR listed 50.4 acre lake. It's not a 34, it's not whatever, and it's 8 acres. 750 feet out of that entire lake, 50 acre lake or 50.4 acre lake process. So we are putting a river section, yes, there, but that's a small, 8 out of 50 is not removing the lake, it's not a river system, it's a small piece.
Thank you. On the other side.
Reviewing this is interesting. I was thinking when I was coming here that you're going to get a river through the city of Rochester and it would be covered with mud. But my question is from your neighbors from the north on the Lake Zumbro side, and Bill, more directed towards you. We just spent $10 million some odd dollars of our own assessments to have our lake dredged and improvements made and hopefully have it for another 100 years. And our dam just celebrated 100 years 2 years ago. When the Lake Shady project happened with the DNR's assistance, we immediately felt the impact of resilting in of the areas that we just dug out and made deeper and more practical. Has there been any engineering studies as to how the removal of this project or the removal of this dam, whichever way you end up going, will affect our downstream silting and damages to our water? Because everything you do in Rochester comes through Lake Zumbro.
So the question has to do with, will any of the projects, no matter which one they're choosing here, will it have an effect downstream near Orinoco? Lake Zumbro.
So I was involved with the Lake Zumbro project as well. And ironically, in the EAW comments, if you look at the DNR, one of their questions was that this will still serve as a sediment trap and will still trap sediment. And that was one of their reasons for removing the dam, because this still will remove sediment. Now, will it remove it at the same amount? Preliminarily, yes, though, as Matt mentioned, there is 8 acres less, but the initial modeling is that it would not, we haven't finished that, but the initial modeling is it would not increase the sediment load downstream. So it would not impact Lake Zumbro.
We have a question.
I'm
here,
just going to
Matt.
add to that quick too. Is you got to remember is that the water coming into Rochester is coming from mainly agricultural areas outside of Rochester. It is coming in with sediment. So Silver Lake is removing the sediment that goes in down to Lake Zumbro. So we are a buffer for Lake Zumbro that we are paying to maintain. So if we went to a river-only section without Silver Lake there, yes, all the sediment that we're capturing now would end up in the lake. So what we're doing, proposing, is still good for Lake Zumbro.
Mary, we have a question here.
This is a technical question. The project, as I understand it, has 2 water paths, one for the fish and one for the recreation floating. Is that correct?
Yeah, the question is, are there are 2 paths for water, one for fish and one for recreation?
And if that's
is
the
that
case,
correct?
then what percentage of that water that we saw graphed is going down the floating path?
You're talking about a found design there. We looked at both water going through both. So at times you'll be able to canoe on both or water play on. The one's a water feature, so it's designed for kayakers to play on. And the fish passage would be more of the normal going through with a canoe or if you wanted to float through there. So the primary flow will be maintained in the fish passage at all times, and the one that's a play area was the one that will be reduced. So you'll have less opportunities, you could say, overall the year to use the play area, and the fish passage area will always have flow going through it. Well, percentages, 75% of the time of every flow, well, that's for the summer months. So you're looking at the flow chart we had up there earlier, which, you're talking, we're going to have more than 20 CFS 100% of the time. So that means water's going through the fish passage. If you want to canoe in it, in the summer months, we said earlier, about 75% of the days you'd be able to canoe in the fish passage during the summer months. So, I guess, what do you want to know for the winter time or?
Thank you. And I want to address a comment I heard that was said by someone in the audience up close so I could hear it, and I don't know who said it, but that I don't believe you. And I want to be really clear about this. This is why we have the professionals and not people's opinions today, because that's what had happened is we weren't getting professional answers to questions, and that's what today is for. It's not opinion. These are professionals who do this. We have engineers, and that's what they're here for, is so that you can hear it from them and not worry about it going through a politician, not worrying about it going through a staff member, not worrying about it being opinion. Professionals. I think they have somebody else first. Hang on. Just a second. Yep.
I appreciate your efforts that you did on Cascade Creek to run that through the former golf course and clean that up. And your picture that you had in your presentation showed children playing in the Cascade Creek before it flown into Zumbro River. I grew up in Rochester. I remember 4th of July when the water ski team performed in Silver Lake, and it was nauseating for those that were there. My question, and this is rhetorical, but when's the last time that anybody in this room has seen somebody voluntarily swim or lay or whatever in Silver Lake?
So
I just don't see that the usage of people tubing and canoeing down Silver Lake.
So the
Rapids.
question was rhetorical, but I think there's a real question in this, is will the water be clean enough after we get the silt out and put this replacement dam in order for it to be used recreationally?
Well, like I said, the sediment will be removed, so you won't have the muck in the bottom. It'll be a more open river. It will sediment in, but you have times to use it. The water quality that's downstream from the lake, it just has sediment removal out there. If you're concerned about bacteria levels, it's in other parts of the Zumbro River downstream too. So the water quality will, and ideally is if we have increased water quality, projects outside the city by other agencies, including water quality, so we don't get sediment and farm runoff in there, you will get water quality increase that some people get to do it. Right now, if you walk out there and you go, 6 inches deep in the water and you have a foot of muck, no, that's not desirable. Nobody wants to do that, but we'll be cleaned up when it's done. You won't have that. That's what we're looking at here.
And it should be mentioned there's also a flood control component to the, well, we haven't talked about it a lot publicly unless you've been following legislative stuff, but we do have a sales tax extension, and one of the focus areas for that is flood control further down on the Zumbro.
Okay, my question is, earlier you said you don't have to raise or lower the lake level to do maintenance. And earlier, I picked up this piece of paper outside that says the water level will be required to be lowered so you can remove the sediment. Does this mean after this you will never remove sediment again, or are you just going to leave it?
So the question is, we're removing sediment right now with this project. Without the dam in the future, will we be able to remove sediment then without having the dam?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about maintenance activity versus daily movement of the water. The water's staying the same on a daily basis. But yes, for maintenance activities, when we do the dam modification, we will be doing lake lowering and doing it at that point. We can look hydraulic, like they did in Lake Zumbro for the future dredging, where we wouldn't have to lower the lake to do it again that way. That is an option. The DNR prefers us to do that way. It just said in this method we're doing it, it's more economical because we can lower it, and this cleaning we're doing right now we're planning to do, and use mechanical equipment.
And could you also address how often sediment is required or should be removed?
Well, I mean, that's a tricky question based on flow and how much upstream sediment. Because the last time we did this was 30 years ago. So our plan is the next 25 years you'd have to do this again. So that's the next time we have to talk about how we're going to remove sediment from Silver Lake. Do we have to lower it again, or can we do it hydraulic dredging that wouldn't impact anything?
Is that ideal, or is that just what we've done? Because that seems like a long time between dredging, so it doesn't seem ideal.
Well, there's two things going on. There's the Corps of Engineers channel. That's what we monitor. So that has just reached the action level that we have to clean out. That's the channel. That doesn't affect the sidewaters where it has, yes, gotten deep. That's more of a, you could say, use. Do we want to spend money from, the city taxpayers' money to clean it out more often, to have that always available or not? That's a different kind of question.
Okay, thank you. We've got one over here. They're coming back. She's right behind you. And if we have people want to ask that have asked questions, want to answer another question. I think we want to get new people first, and then we'll come back. No, you will get your questions answered before we're done, I promise.
Hi. What I'm asking, this isn't an opinion, this is a fact from spending a lot of time on the water and being a paramedic for a number of years, but there's just some safety things I want to make sure you've considered. Number one, when you're going to have people that are probably fishing in this area, which is fine, it's great, but you're going to have a narrow kind of a choke point where people are going through in boats and canoes and kayaks, which is great. I just want to bring it to your attention, but sometimes that can really be there's a conflict with that, and I want to make sure that you've looked at that. The other thing with these kayak pools, they are great. They're a lot of fun, but you're going to have people that are non-swimmers. They're going to go down and they're going to be wandering around in that area, and sometimes they can get swept away, and they will drown and get swept away. I don't want to poo-poo it. I just want to make sure you're thinking about safety. And the last one is, I don't know if you've ever been on the Root River in the summer when people are coming through on kayaks and canoes and whatever. There's a lot of people that are intoxicated on the water going through, and it's going to be a whole different element of folks in there. And it sounds fun, but I just want to make sure you've thought through the safety part of this, because there's a real chance that some stuff could happen.
Yeah, so the question, there were kind of three parts to it, but it had to do with safety. Have you considered safety elements such as, like, for instance, is someone in a kayak or canoe required to wear life jackets? Well, he was concerned about kayakers drowning, and so if kayakers have to wear a life vest, then that negates that. So the question is, do you have to, I guess, or would we require it? And then the other parts of his question, I hope you heard.
Well, I mean, when you talked about the safety, yes, those are things that people should be concerned about. We have rivers and creeks throughout the entire area of Rochester and that children can get into and be swept away with, so it's a safety concern everywhere. That goes back to the use of these facilities. Yes, we know as you move forward with the final design, if we get input from people that don't want fishing in these areas to keep fishermen from impacting with floaters, yes. And again, anybody that jumps in the water, there's always a risk of some bad things can happen. That's any part in our system, and we are aware of that for this system too. But we do feel this would be a safer system than the current system we have in place.
So they're trying to let people ask a question that haven't asked one yet, so hang in there.
I have a question about the water quality. I came from a town in Michigan that our town did something like this for kayak and boaters. The geese poop and the runoff from the farms were too bad. They've never been able to use it.
Yeah.
So have you looked at the water quality now and in the future for people to really get in the water like that and over there asked?
So the question has to do with goose poop and the silt and the runoff, and is the water, has the water been checked so that it's clean enough to be used? And will it be?
Yeah, we haven't done specific water quality. I mean, there is a TMDL, there are MPCA did numbers on, we know there's a fecal coliform for the Zumbro River. Those are out there. And that's what the watershed programs are for, to try to increase that water quality. This project alone is not going to solve all those problems. We are aware that those issues need to be addressed too to make this more usable. But like I said, people are still using the Zumbro River no matter what those issues are in all different locations.
So I'm going to follow up on that. Cascade Lake does post if there's unsafe water quality. Would Silver Lake do the same thing if it's being utilized? I'm not sure who from the Park and Rec.
Yeah, we would follow the same protocol we use at Cascade Lake. Anytime there's a water quality issue, which is bacteria, we test the water at least once a week at Cascade and Foster, and we do the same for any recreational use at Silver Lake.
Thank you. We've got a question at the other side.
Okay, I just want to say that I thought the presentation looked really exciting. This is building into my question, but the way that the new system flowing and having these that are shot, I look forward to the kayaking and the paddling around. I think that's very exciting. I have a new granddaughter. I have memories of growing up along a river and just from a little kid going to the river's edge and catching minnows and just playing along the rocks. So here's my question. Will I be able to take my new granddaughter by the hand and bring her down to some of these new areas and play along the river's edge? And I think that all of this seems more welcoming to young families coming into Rochester. And again, I'm excited, but will I be able to bring my grandchildren right down there?
So the question has to do with bringing a grandchild down to the river's edge. Will we be able to do that? And right now there are some barriers to getting down to the river. Will those be addressed?
So good question. I think that I'm going to expand upon your question just a little bit and say we hear that desire across the community for water access along our entire river corridor areas. So this is no different. As we're doing the master plan for Silver Lake and Soldiers Field and 6th Street Bridge area and et cetera, these are all conversations we're having about getting access down to the water's edge. So that is part of the master planning process.
Thank you. So we have a couple more questions here, but they've asked us to be out of the building at 9. And so we will get to as many questions as we can, and then they would ask you to write down any questions that have not been answered, and they will respond to you by email. So somebody's running around here with a thing, so maybe we can go a little faster.
Hi, there's been a lot of talk about increasing the usage of the water, but there is a group that currently uses the water 5-6 days a week, about 6 months out of the year. That's the Rochester Rowing Club. Which involves kids from 7th grade through high school who are dedicated to that sport. Yep. And again, they are on that water all the time. I don't see anybody else on that water, quite frankly. So my question is, how long will the dredging process take?
How long will the dredging process take?
Have any other considerations been given to the impact this is going to have on that group?
During the cleanup?
During the dredging and the potential loss of use of the area for that group, how much of the water are they going to lose access to?
I think they
By
addressed
looking
that,
at
but
it,
they
it
can do
looks
again.
like they're going to lose about a third of their rowing space. Has that been considered? So just a general question really
Okay,
about.
so the impact of the
process
changes and dredging on rowing. Yeah. Somebody want to address rowing? And how long the dredging
How about this? I will do the dredging part, and I'll let Matt handle the rowing. So what we preliminarily discussed is that this would be a late fall, winter construction. When I say preliminarily, meaning we haven't final designed it, but that's the intent to basically, we're trying to avoid high flow times, so spring and summer. So we would generally be off season from any other recreational uses. I'll let Matt speak to the rowing.
Well, you're looking at, from fall to spring, yeah, you're looking at 6 months for sure. I mean, obviously, construction issues happen, so it could be longer, but we're looking at trying to get it done in the fall, so you're starting probably as soon as the water drops, like an October timeframe to start doing some of the work, especially if you're looking at the modification, the rock, the sediment removal, and that would go until early spring, so that's the plan. The issue with the rowing club, yes, they will lose some of their footage there. One thing we've talked about, and it's in the response we had in there, is that currently there's nowhere that's 1,000 meters straight on Silver Lake. You have to use others, so it's less than that. There is, Cascade Lake has 1,000 meters that could be practiced on, and there's 2,000 meters, which is another race that I know they do for that. That is available on Lake Zumbro. So, I mean, the Silver Lake isn't long enough, I know, for what you need for your races now, but it does provide some practice zone. But you will be losing in that 750-foot zone. You're probably going to lose 300 to 400 feet. The rest are too close to the dam. You couldn't be in there anyway. So that will be an impact to you guys. But I know there's other opportunities where you could potentially practice.
And I think it's worth mentioning that this is going to be dredged. This has to be dredged. So whether we do the project, I mean, that's your question, your concern is irrespective of the whole project. It's when dredging is done, right, how will it affect you? And so I think, sounds like you need to be in contact probably with these folks as it happens.
Mayor, we have one question back here, and I would suggest, given the time, that if you're a city teammate here, if you could raise your hand, it would be great if city teammates could be in the lobby and be available to write down questions that we were not able to get to this evening.
Or write them down. Yeah, I just asked them to do that. Write down your questions, and
Give
we'll
them
get
to
them
a
to the
city
staff,
teammate, yeah.
and they'll respond to you.
Okay, last question here.
Wow, I get to end the night.
No, I promised Sean she could ask her question, so
So
sorry.
my question is, being a Lake Zumbro resident now, okay, before I was Manorwood Lakes, and remember in 2004 when we did Cascade Lake and you hired Bunasro to, I think that's how you pronounce it, to actually do Cascade Lake, and there was so much back and forth about water quality, and you guys, being the city, were so adamant that the city lake was going to have better water quality than Manorwood Lakes, where I lived at the time. And I totally dismissed that, or you may totally told you guys that was not the case. But we see that Cascade Lake is closed often because of E. coli.
The fecal, yeah,
okay?
cola.
So I want to make sure, living downstream from this area, well, I want to make sure of a couple things, that sediment doesn't travel down to Lake Zumbro, because we just did spend a ton of money on dredging Lake Zumbro. We've seen where it's already being impacted by more sediment. I want to know what you guys have done since 2004, when I was involved in this other lake, to clean up stuff before it gets to us, okay? Because we do have to practice upstream water quality. And I'd also like to know, with the floods, we see Manorwood Lakes and Cascade Lake. I mean, that will bounce 8 or 9 feet on a high water. We get that same bounce on Lake Zumbro. When we get a lot of water, it flows down Cascade Lake, or the creek, and it falls into Lake Zumbro, and it's not unusual for that lake to jump 6, 7, 8 feet.
And so your concerns, I think you probably need to spend more time with the staff asking that. Maybe you can step out in the hall and we can have a couple of them come talk to you. They've addressed a couple of these issues already. And I think to remember that the silt and the sediment that we have isn't being made in Rochester, it's being made and it comes to us and it keeps going, right? And so, yep, that question has come up, but it isn't part of this particular project. But was there something? Do you want to address it quickly?
Short answer is one thing. The bounce will not change. It still will bounce up the same, and other efforts are being done in the watershed, as Matt had mentioned earlier, and those things will continue to go on. So that's the real short answer.
Yeah, so why don't you talk with them in the hall here in just a moment when we finish up. Sean, just quickly, please.
I just want to know, when they did the flood control, they put water access down even at Mayo Park, which is kind of out of the Silver Lake area. But when the kids go down those stairs and get in the water, the cops come and drag them out of there and make them get out. And I want to know, I mean, it's sort of discouraging kids playing in the water anyway. And that's not that deep of water. But why did it take 20-some years for that Silver Lake to get dredged?
Well, again, as I mentioned earlier, we have monitoring levels for the channel through there, and that was what the basis for cleaning. The the core is why we're doing the project. The rest of Silver Lake being dredged out is more of a community-based issue of where you want the funding. That probably has to deal more with your council persons and other groups. That isn't part of this project, is long-term maintenance of all the different areas of Silver Lake. It's going to happen dredging at this time to improve it, but that's a different question.
Okay, so we are done with Q&A for the group. The staff will be outside the door. If you have a question that you didn't get answered, they will be out there for a few more minutes. And I want you to know that if you have other questions that have not been answered, send them to us in writing and you will get a response. I promise that, okay?